The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of the Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege, and we're so glad you joined us today because we have another great show coming up. Before I get to the show, I just want to ask you to like, follow our Instagram, Facebook, and X account where you can find out all the information about the show, the guests, and my honor wardrobe that is provided courtesy of the Spring of Tampa Bay. The Spring of Tampa Bay provides safe spaces and empowering services to survivors of domestic violence and their children. And I want you to support them because the thrift store and the boutique are now located in their brand new location at 4415 West Osborne here in Tampa in an area we call Drew Park. And you'll have fun shopping there because I guarantee you I do. And on the my pages, you'll find out about the wardrobe pieces and when they're available at the boutique. So you could also find the audio of our show on Sun Radio, 96.3 FM, and on your favorite streaming platform, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So we got you covered. We're on cable, we're on radio. There's no way you can miss anything of all the great shows we do here on Connecting with Kim, which are designed to help you live your best life in our corner of paradise. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Connie Rose, and she is the founder and the executive director of Victims2Survivors, which is an organization that helps fight and wants to eradicate human trafficking and provides support services. And she's going to tell you all about it, so I don't really need to tell you anymore. Support services to this population. So Connie, welcome to Connecting with Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So we start the show the same way all the time. Mm-hmm. I really feel it's important for my guests to share something about their life journey because you just never know when somebody listening out there has something in common with you. And we would hope that if they had something common with you, that they would, either a school you went to or a job you did or a place you're from, whatever, that they would stay with us and listen to the rest of what we have to talk about. So.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to be able to share with the public at large about Victims2SurvivorsUS, and more importantly about our mission and why we do what we do. So a little bit about my journey. So I grew up in Tampa, was not born here, was born actually in Darby, Pennsylvania. People ask that all the time because of my accent. And growing up actually in South Hillsborough County and then moving over very close to the airport. And I share that with you because as we move along in this conversation today, or maybe as you start to really follow Victim2Survivors and you learn a lot more about us, I have a lot of conversations about going from the suburbs to the boardroom. And what do I mean by that? So I am a survivor. I am a survivor of over 14 years of sexual abuse, incest, pornography, exploitation. And then just before my 15th birthday is when I was told that I would be a prostitute. Now, there is a lot more to that story, right? And we don't have time to really get into that. But here's what I want to say about that, because people want to know then who was my perpetrator, who was my trafficker, and how did I survive? So first, my perpetrator and my trafficker were my father. He was a serial sex offender. As well, he became my pimp right before I turned 16 years old. By the way, he continued, and I'm sharing this with you because please listen. Age, it does not matter about age for a perpetrator. My father was still a trafficker and a perpetrator at 82 years old in a wheelchair when he passed away.
Yes. I'm so shocked by that. I don't actually know what to say. I hope you'll forgive me for not having the right words, because I'm so shocked by that. But
and I apologize. So
No, I don't want you.
No, so please know that, not just for you, Kim, but for your audience, that when I or someone else shares, right, it's not about that shock syndrome, although we know, because you're like, what? And especially because it's incest, so it's a family member.
Right.
It's familiar trafficking, it's a family member. It's the largest percentage. How does that happen? It is a shock to a lot of folks. But please know that my intention when I share my journey is not about the shock. It is about to educate you. It's about for you to really know and understand that this can happen to anyone. I grew up Catholic and Greek Orthodox from a very prominent family, not wealthy, but very prominent family in the Greek community. Upper middle class. Parents worked, 2 jobs at times to support us. And every extracurricular activity, right, I thought that I was blessed, right? So as a young child, now we're going to talk for a moment about grooming, because, and it all ties into my journey.
Sure.
So my grooming process for me, as so many survivors that I have worked with throughout the years, and if it's incest and familiar trafficking, it starts with things like, oh, I want to be in brownies. Oh, I want to be in Girl Scouts. A parent approaching you. Oh, you're a great dancer. Why don't we give you dance lessons? You want to be in beauty pageants? You want to model? So those were all the things that I did as a child growing up, thinking, wow, my parents aren't wealthy, but how cool it is that I get to do this, right? Later on in life, what I found out was that was a grooming process for my father. That was, she wants to do that, I'll let her do that, and I now own her. But the other part of it is that it gave me this extra confidence, right? You imagine being on a runway, whether it's modeling, whether it's in beauty pageants, dancing, whatever it might have been. Everything that he introduced me to, that I absolutely loved, by the way, was another way to really boost that extra confidence in me, so that when it was time, when I became the right age, and it was time for him to rent me, because he didn't sell me, he rented me out by the hour, the day, the night, the weekend, whatever it might be, is that because I had all this confidence that when I had to go to an elite party and I was the party favor, I knew exactly how to act, I knew exactly how to dress, I knew exactly how to present myself. So I was basically like the perfect teenage hostess to be passed around as the party favor. Now, it's very important again, and maybe at some other time we'll have a whole conversation about grooming, because that is one of the roots.
Well, you and I had conversations before you came on the show, and obviously in the time we had together, you can't cover your entire life cycle, right? Or mine either. It just doesn't work that way. But I'm sitting here, and because I shared a story with you about a girlfriend. Yes. I'm sitting here, and my head's blown. Like if we could do the meme, my head would be coming off right now. But this all makes sense to me. I don't think anybody knows what to say in this situation other than, I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's not right, right? So now you've been involved in all these activities, and I'm sure nobody knew, right? Nobody knew.
No one knew. As a matter of fact, it took me years. So the sexual abuse I started speaking about when my father was arrested in the 80s. So I did start having that conversation. I had my son, I did not have my daughter yet. My husband at the time and I had a very large advertising agency. There was a case out in California of a daycare center that came forward. They were arrested for years of sexual abuse. And the media went crazy. The media at that time said that if you were sexually abused as a child, and you have a child, you will perpetrate on your child. Well, let me just tell you that it took everything in my heart and soul and body to have a child, and there was no way no one was going to touch my child, and more importantly, no way was I. So I said, fine, here's how this is going to go down. You won the contract to go out and talk about victims will perpetrate. I am going to go out and I'm going to talk about breaking the silence. Your past does not define you, that we can break the silence. And the only way that we are going to eradicate childhood sexual abuse is for us that have been perpetrated upon to come forward.
And that's why I feel so blessed to be able to do shows like this and in my role here at Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network, because it is important for people to understand this is going on right underneath your nose. You would never suspect it. And more importantly, for them to understand what they should start to look out for, because you can say, if you say something, do something. That's just a slogan. I mean, you have to help enable people to be able to have the courage to do that, right?
Which leads me to two things. So one, first is I did not tell anyone about the sex trafficking part. And the reason is because I didn't know I was a prostitute. How do you tell someone that you agreed to be a prostitute before your 16th birthday? Had no words for that.
Right.
However, I was introduced to this phenomenal woman, Miss June Wallace. Next thing I know, I'm on the board for the Community Campaign Against Human Trafficking. I used to have a radio show. She asked me if I would do something on Super Bowl. I said yes. I was researching. There is something that is called the ugly underbelly of Super Bowl. In my research, in that particular time frame, it was about young girls, party favors, and party buses. Hello, that's my story to a degree. The light bulb went off. I went to Miss June and I said, oh my goodness, Miss June, am I a victim of human trafficking? Am I a victim of sex trafficking? And then from there, it just led me down this incredible path of being a victor, of being a voice, and not that I'm a voice to silence anyone else, but to be a voice, to let people know that we are here, right? That these things have happened to us. That how do we move beyond the blame, shame, and guilt?
Yeah, I imagine it could be overwhelming. And it's so, I mean, I want to congratulate you on being a survivor. Not only a survivor, but a thriver. You know, and so if you're just joining into Connecting with Kim here on TBAE, my guest in the chair is Connie Rose, who is the founder and the executive director of Victims2SurvivorsUS. Forgive me for forgetting that before.
That's all right.
And we're talking about her life, having been human trafficked and sex trafficked in her adolescence, in her teenage years, and of course being unfortunately a victim of incest. So we're talking about how she survived that, and now how she took that experience, and we're going to talk about the founding of Victims to Survivors. So is this a good place to launch into that?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Good.
So I had shared with you just a moment
With
ago
June.
on my interview with Miss June Wallace, realizing that I was a victim of sex trafficking, that I was not a child prostitute. First of all, children cannot be prostitutes. However, media unfortunately still calls us child prostitutes. It really led me then down this path of what do we do? So we created Victim to Survivors to really be that bridge to fill the gap. And of course, over the years, we have evolved. And depending on what's going on, sometimes we have to divert from our basic mission, right, to really address the needs of the current times. Our base is that bridge to fill the gap. Our base is to walk alongside, and we really work with older survivors more than survivors that have just come out.
Okay.
Right, to walk along survivors that have experienced horrific things in their lives. How do we instill in them that they're not damaged goods?
Right.
That we can walk along together to move beyond that blame, shame, and guilt. Because so many of us, we carry it. If I only didn't agree to this, if I only didn't say okay, whatever, if I only didn't get in that car, whatever that conversation might be.
Right.
So our goal and our mission is really also to create awareness. So we do international training to all different nonprofits, different service organizations, a lot of medical training, and it's really to get that message out. What did they miss? Especially the medical setting. What did you miss? What did you miss all those times I went in the emergency room? What did you miss when my father was the one that took me to the gynecologist at 15? You know, so not about, even for professionals, right, that are providing services, it's also not to do the blame, shame, and guilt for you for what you missed. But now, how do we take it from here? How do we move forward in this conversation? And more importantly, how do we provide services in this day and age, not just to folks that are just coming out, but to folks, to survivors, to thrivers that have been out for years. However, life COVID took a toll on a lot of my survivors.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them tried to re-enter.
Yeah.
Right now in society, it's taking a toll on some folks for different reasons. Everyone has their reasons of how they're reacting to different things in life and in society right now. How do we support them? How do we navigate the system? But again, more importantly is how do we give them that space to really figure out who they are, what is their purpose in life, and not to be defined by a crime that was committed
against them. Against them.
Absolutely.
So tell me what kinds of, well, I kind of want to go back to this because I don't think people fully realize what a big event like the Super Bowl, like there's all the good stuff, the teams and the fun and the experience and the game and so on. And then there's all this thing that goes on with it, what you call the underbelly or the underside of sex trafficking. It's huge. It's a huge part of that. And I don't think people really understand that is big time. Big money, big opportunity.
Well, any large sporting event.
Yeah, well, any large.
I mean,
I'm not
actually,
just picking on the Super Bowl, but
but
we're getting ready to have it, so
exactly. Oh no, so it's perfect. And in Louisiana,
Right.
right, which we were out there for the Final Four with V2S, our Post-it notes were everywhere,
Yeah.
all through New
Yeah.
Orleans, which was very much an honor for Victim to Survivors. But with the Super Bowl, so here's what I want to say. So we really hyper-focus, and thank you to every organization, law enforcement agency that creates task forces, goes in weeks ahead of time, established, a certain area, awareness events, all of that. However, here's what I want to say. When there's a big event, it's not just where the event is occurring, where folks are being rented out. Okay? There are parties all over the country.
Right.
All over the country, there are Super Bowl parties.
Right.
And at a large majority of those Super Bowl parties, especially when they're junkets and a mass of people are brought in, and it's kind of like what happens here stays here,
Right.
That kind of conversation.
Right.
There's a lot that goes on. So I encourage not just to hyper-focus where a large sporting event is occurring, but really where else is it being aired? Where else are there large groups of people that are watching it? And how do I know this? I'm going to share something. I cannot believe I'm going to say this because we're burying my kid's father this weekend. But we used to run junkets to Vegas for the Super Bowl. And what do you think he used to hire? That's where I learned. That's where I learned that it wasn't just at where
the event is.
Exactly.
You have direct experience.
Exactly.
Talk to me about what kind of services you provide at Victim2SurvivorsUS. Flesh that out a little bit more for us.
So I'll just start with the basic, about going out and creating awareness, doing a lot of training, and we do a lot of leadership training, right? So what we do is we actually go out into the corporate world and into the government entities and not just talk about human trafficking. What we do is we go out and we will train on how to be a new supervisor. But in that conversation of how to be a new supervisor, we will bring in that conversation of this is what human trafficking looks like, the different areas of human trafficking, focus on sex trafficking, bring in the intersection of domestic violence and sex trafficking, because a lot of folks can understand domestic violence, right? Bring in that intersection because there is an intersection, and then give them tips of what to look for if there's an employee, a staff member. Things for them to look for, not to confront, but to watch, to look for, and then what kind of policy, procedures, and protocols will they put into place if in fact they have a staff member, an employee, that they find that is being coerced, being forced, or even on their own free will participating.
And that they want to help, because you can't just, especially if you're working in an organization, you have to have policies and procedures and a way to safely, for everybody involved, report and have your suspicions investigated, at least, right?
Exactly. And then a survivor will reach out to us. Again, we focus more on folks that have been out or older survivors. But we have worked with numerous of younger survivors and teens A lot of mentorship. So we do a lot of mentorship with our survivors, just walking them through, this is what life can look like. These are services that can be provided to you. What's the next step for you? What will that look like? Connecting them with maybe some educational opportunities. There are different scholarships throughout the country that different organizations are offering them, tapping them into those, as well as walking them through if they need other resources and services. We will go with them. Right now we have 2 that we're working with, and we're the whole process going through different testing, interacting with law enforcement, interacting with attorneys, whatever it might be that is a need.
Because I would imagine that, while there may be certain similarities in these people's experiences, these survivors' experiences, I would imagine there are multiple shades of gray on the circumstances, right, surrounding what actually happened to them. So it would lead me to believe that it's very tailored to what their particular needs are, because not everybody's going to need the same thing.
Oh, no.
I mean, not everybody had the same experience, even though there were certain basics and certain similar circumstances of what they went through, right? I mean, I don't think I'm phrasing this very well.
No, you're absolutely. And one of the other things is that we're also an incubator. And so, for instance, years ago, I was asked, what can we do in the state of Florida? So the state of Florida was the 12th state to pass the Safe Harbor Act in 2012.
Okay.
And that really started our first legislation in the state of Florida to start providing robust services. And we started with our minors. And one of the very first safe houses for minors actually opened up in Tampa.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Unfortunately, they did shut down, right? And there's a lot of reasons behind it. Nothing about them, all right? Just want to make it very clear. But they run an incredible organization still in Hillsborough County, in Tampa. However, they came to me, the state actually came to me and said, we've passed Safe Harbor, we have survivors that are coming forward, they're looking for jobs. I am all about, so I'm very, very vocal, a very loud voice, where people will literally say, Connie's coming to that meeting? Whether it's a legislation meeting, whatever it might be, because my first words out of my mouth are, where are your survivors? Where are your survivors that are in a leadership position, in a management position, and on an advisory board, but they're not your token? Where are they? And so as being an incubator, right, there was a group of us that had gotten together. My role was to have a conversation and bring forward to the legislation to provide job to survivors throughout the state. So what we ended up doing was creating an incredible organization called the Open Doors Outreach Network. We had 5 different service providers underneath the network and 54 survivors on staff. Now, not directly with us, but through the other organizations that were underneath our umbrella. That's another avenue, another venue that Victim to Survivors will go. If you want an incubator, if you want to learn how to have community conversations about human trafficking in your own backyard, to create your strategic plan of how do we start to eradicate this in our backyard, V2S, call us.
Yeah, because I think that most people still don't believe, well, they don't understand, but most important, they don't believe that this is going on right under their nose in every community, in every suburb, everywhere in this country. They don't want to accept that, but it really is. So we just have a couple of minutes left, and before we went on air, I said, if you want to make any kind of direct appeal to our watching and listening audience, I want to give you that opportunity to say anything additional that maybe I didn't cover or I didn't ask you about or that you think is important. So
Sure.
You can just look into your camera right there. And
That's my camera right there.
that's your camera right there. See, look at you. You're right there. They're looking at you.
So my direct appeal. So the first thing that I would like to say is, again, to anyone that is out there that is listening, watching, if you have been victimized in any way at all, please first go find folks to talk to. You can always even reach out to me and I will help direct you with a resource. Please know that you are not to blame. Please let us walk alongside of you and let you really empower, let you really believe that you can move beyond that blame, that shame, and that guilt. And that you too can live the life that you were intended to live. The other thing that I would like to leave you with is not just about see something, say something, and report, but when you report, please make sure that you have as many details, not just it's a white van in the Publix parking lot. You need what kind of white van? What year do you think it is? Are there any scratches on it, any dents on it, any rust on it? Where was it parked? And do not ever approach. Please do not ever approach. And then I would like to leave you with this. When a survivor comes forward and they share their journey, please believe them. Please take that deep breath. Please pause for a moment before you say anything. And more importantly, please believe them. And at the end of the day, Victim to Survivors, we're here at any capacity that you need, because if it is not a service that we provide, we work with so many other organizations, and some of them have been on Connecting with Kim.
Some of them have been on Connecting
They're
with
my
Kim.
great friends. We've been in the
I know,
trenches
I'm very
together.
blessed. I'm very blessed.
We've been in the trenches together.
Yeah.
We will connect you.
Yeah. Well, Connie, thank you so much for being my guest today on Connecting with Kim. My guest today, in case you're just tuning in, was Connie Rose from Victims2SurvivorsUS, which is a anti-human trafficking organization and support service organization to folks that have survived this kind of ordeal. But before we went in here, I have to talk about this too, because everyone knows that my on-air wardrobe sponsor is the Spring of Tampa Bay, who provides safe spaces and empowering services for survivors of domestic violence and their children. But Connie, when she came in today, told me that her outfit that she has on, isn't it gorgeous, is also from the Spring. So you see, there is living proof, people, that you can find the most beautiful things at the Spring boutique and the thrift store, which are now located at 4415 West Osborne here in Tampa in their brand new facility in an area we call Drew Park. So that's all we have time for today on Connecting with Kim. I hope you'll come back next week for another episode helping you live your best life in our corner of paradise. And don't forget to like, follow our Instagram, Facebook, and X account so that you can find out all the latest information about the episode, the guest, their organization, because I post a lot of information, and how you too can make a difference in someone's life. So long.